She looked different, not proud, not smiling, thoughtful. "Delaney," she said softly. "Was it you?" There was no point in lying. "Yes." She stared at me, her eyes filling with tears. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" I shrugged gently. It wasn't about attention. She looked around my clinic, the busy reception area, the surgery wing, the recovery rooms filled with quiet, breathing animals. I could see something shifting in her understanding. For the first time, she wasn't looking at me like the daughter who worked with pets. She was looking at me like someone she didn't fully know yet. And I realized something important. The donation wasn't just about money. It was about changing a story they had told about me for years. That Sunday dinner felt different before I even walked in. The air was tight, like everyone already knew something important but didn't know how to say it. Trenton barely looked at me at first. Caldwell kept clearing his throat. My mother was unusually quiet. Finally, Trenton put his fork down. "We heard something," he said slowly, "about the donor." I didn't respond right away. Caldwell looked straight at me. "Was it you who gave the money to the hospital?" "Yes," I answered calmly. The room went silent. Mirella blinked. "You? The full amount?" "Yes." Trenton leaned back in his chair, studying me in a way he never had before. Not mocking, not amused, just confused. "Why didn't you say anything?" I kept my voice steady. "Because it wasn't about being seen." Caldwell frowned slightly. "That's a lot of money. I didn't realize your clinic was doing that well." There it was. Not an apology, just surprise. "It's been doing well for years," I said. "You just never ask." That sentence hung in the air longer than anything else I had ever said at that table. My mother reached for my hand. "We should have paid more attention," she whispered. Trenton finally spoke again. "I didn't mean to make you feel small all those years." I looked at him carefully. "Maybe you didn't mean to, but you did." He didn't argue. For the first time, no one laughed. No one made a joke. No one changed the subject. Weeks later, the cardiac wing officially opened. There was a ceremony at the hospital. Doctors, nurses, and community members gathered inside the bright new hallway. A small plaque near the entrance read, "With gratitude to an anonymous member of our community." I stood quietly in the back of the crowd. Trenton gave a speech about teamwork and generosity. His voice sounded sincere. When he finished, he stepped down from the podium and walked toward me. He extended his hand. "Thank you," he said. Not sarcastic. Not playful. Just honest. I shook his hand. "You're welcome." Caldwell approached more slowly. He didn't apologize. He didn't give a speech. But he said something simple. "I underestimated you. It wasn't perfect, but it was real." After that day, something changed permanently. At family gatherings, no one called my work a hobby again. No one compared me to my brother. When people asked what I did, Caldwell said, "My stepdaughter is a surgeon." He didn't add "for animals." He didn't laugh. And I realized something powerful. The money wasn't the revenge. The silence was. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that. No dramatic hugs. No big family speech about how wrong they were. But something had shifted in a quiet, permanent way. At the next holiday gathering, a neighbor asked what I did for a living. Before I could answer, Caldwell spoke first. "Delaney runs one of the most advanced surgical clinics in the region," he said. There was no joking tone. No smirk. Just fact. I noticed the difference immediately. Years ago, he would have said I worked with pets. Now he used words like advanced and surgical. It wasn't flashy, but it was respect. Trenton also changed. He stopped making comparisons. Instead, he started asking real questions. "How's the orthopedic unit going? Or are you still getting referrals from Wyoming?" He listened to the answers. He didn't interrupt. One evening, after dinner, he stayed behind while everyone else cleared the table. "I think I always saw medicine as a competition," he admitted. "Human versus animal. Bigger versus smaller." "It was never a competition for me," I said. "I just wanted to do my job well." He nodded slowly. "You did more than that. The truth is, I didn't donate the money to embarrass them. I donated it because I could. because the hospital needed it, because helping is helping, no matter who the patient is. But I won't lie. There is something satisfying about watching their assumptions fall apart without me saying a word. For years, they believed importance had a ranking system. Heart surgeon at the top, veterinarian somewhere near the bottom. That belief shaped how they treated me. The donation forced them to rethink everything. It wasn't loud revenge. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady and controlled. The best part? I never had to argue again. At my clinic, nothing changed. I still wake up early. I still scrub in for surgery. I still sit on the floor with anxious owners and explain procedures in simple terms. I still feel the same quiet joy when an animal stands up after a successful operation. But inside, I feel lighter. Not because they finally saw my value, because I stopped needing them to. One afternoon, a young girl came into the clinic with her injured cat. She looked nervous and asked, "Are you a real doctor?" I smiled gently. "Yes," I said. "I am." She nodded like that made perfect sense. And that's when it truly settled in my heart. I don't save lives to compete with anyone. I don't work hard for applause. I don't measure my success against someone else's title. They once called it a puppy hobby. Now they call it what it is. A career. A calling. A responsibility. And I never had to raise my voice to prove it. They laughed at my puppy hobby for years until the hospital wing they were begging money for was funded by the same woman they mocked me. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Delaney Whitaker. I am 38 years old, and I am a veterinarian in a small town called Cedar Ridge, Colorado. I own a surgical animal clinic. I worked hard for it. I studied for years, took loans, and spent many nights sleeping on the clinic couch when I first opened it. But in my family, none of that mattered. My older brother, Trenton Whitaker, is a heart doctor in Denver. Since we were kids, he was always the golden child. Straight A's, scholarships, big hospital job. My stepfather, Caldwell Pierce, never stopped talking about him. At family dinners, Caldwell would brag about Trenton saving lives, about how important his work was. When it was my turn to talk about my clinic, things changed. Trenton would smile in that way that didn't feel kind. "So, how's the puppy spa going?" he would say. Everyone would laugh. My cousin Morella once asked if I ever planned to become a real doctor. She said it like she was joking, but it didn't feel like a joke. The worst part wasn't the words. It was how normal it became. Every holiday, every birthday dinner, someone would make a comment about me playing with dogs all day. Caldwell even introduced me to his friends once by saying, "This is Delaney. She runs a little pet place." A little pet place. As if I hadn't spent years training in surgery. I used to try to defend myself. I would explain how I perform emergency operations, how I treat animals hit by cars, how families cry when I save their pets. But the more I explained, the more they smiled politely and changed the subject. One night at my mother's birthday dinner, Trenton raised a glass and said, "To family success. Some of us fix human hearts, and some of us fix golden retrievers." The room filled with laughter. I looked at my mom, hoping she would say something. She didn't. She just smiled and took a sip of her drink. That was the moment something inside me changed. I stopped trying to prove myself. I stopped explaining. I decided I would let them believe whatever they wanted. On the drive back to my clinic that night, I felt embarrassed and angry at the same time. But I also felt clear. They thought I was small. They thought my work didn't matter. Fine. I would keep building quietly. They didn't need to understand my worth. One day they would see it. After that birthday dinner, I stopped arguing. I stopped trying to explain what I did. When someone made a joke, I simply smiled. It confused them at first. They were used to me defending myself. But I was done wasting energy. Back at my clinic, my real life was happening. Cedar Ridge Animal Surgical Center was no longer a small office with 2 rooms. Over the years, I had expanded it step by step. I added a second surgery room, then advanced imaging equipment, then a recovery ward for animals that needed long-term care. I hired a skilled technician named Bryson Keene and later brought in a rehabilitation specialist, Dr. Eloan Marsh. We didn't just give vaccines. We handled complicated orthopedic cases. We treated emergency trauma from highway accidents. Ranchers from Wyoming and Kansas drove hours to bring their animals to us. Families trusted me with pets they considered their children. I remember one winter night when a family rushed in with their German Shepherd after a bad accident. The dog needed immediate surgery. It was delicate and risky. I operated for hours. When I finally told them their dog would survive, the mother hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. She kept saying, "You saved our baby." Moments like that were real. They mattered. Financially, the clinic grew faster than I expected. I invested carefully. I didn't upgrade my car. I didn't move into a big house. I paid off my student loans and reinvested in better equipment. Within a few years, my income passed 6 figures. Not once. Consistently. But at family dinners, nothing changed. Caldwell still bragged about Trenton's hospital achievements. Morella still asked if business was steady. It didn't bother me the same way anymore. Their opinions felt smaller now. Then came the announcement that changed everything. Trenton shared exciting news at Sunday dinner. He was leading a fundraising campaign for a new cardiac wing at Cedar Ridge Community Hospital. The town needed $100,000 more to complete it. He talked about how important it was for the community. Everyone clapped. Caldwell looked proud beyond words. He turned to me and said, "Now this is what real impact looks like." I felt something rise in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. I congratulated Trenton. I even told him it was impressive. Inside, though, I was thinking, they believed impact only counted when it involved humans. They believed importance came from titles and recognition. They believed I worked in the shadow of my brother. That night, after dinner, I stayed late at my clinic reviewing financial reports. I looked at the numbers carefully. I thought about every insult, every joke, every time I felt invisible. And for the first time, I saw a quiet opportunity, not to prove myself loudly, but to shift everything silently. A week later, I made an appointment with the hospital administrator. His name was Grant Halvorson. He looked surprised when I walked into his office wearing my usual Navy scrubs. "I'd like to contribute to the cardiac wing project," I told him. He smiled politely. "Every donation helps." I slid a document across his desk. The amount was written clearly, $100,000. He stared at the number, then back at me. "You're covering the remaining balance?" "Yes." He leaned back in his chair, almost speechless. "Dr. Whitaker, this is incredibly generous. We would like to recognize you publicly." "No," I said calmly. "I wanted to stay anonymous." He looked confused. "Are you sure? This would bring great visibility to your clinic." "That's not why I'm doing it." And it wasn't. I didn't want applause. I didn't want a banner with my name in gold letters. I wanted something else. I wanted them to face their own assumptions. Grant eventually agreed. The paperwork was signed quietly. The transfer was completed within days. At the next Sunday dinner, Trenton looked more stressed than usual. "We're still short," he admitted. "We're trying to find a major donor." I kept my expression neutral. "I'm sure you will." 2 days later, the hospital released the announcement. A generous anonymous donor had contributed the full remaining $100,000 needed to complete the cardiac wing. The town newspaper ran a short article praising the unknown benefactor. At dinner that week, the mood was celebratory. Trenton was glowing. "We did it," he said proudly. "Some incredible person stepped up." Caldwell shook his head in admiration. "That's real generosity. That's what community leadership looks like." I sat there quietly, sipping my water. Part of me felt nervous. Not because I regretted it, but because I knew the truth would surface eventually. Small towns don't keep secrets forever. 3 weeks later, it happened. One of the construction supervisors had been at the hospital office the day I signed the final documents. He mentioned it casually to someone who knew my mother. The story traveled quickly. That afternoon, my mother showed up at my clinic unannounced.